"Stefan, let me go." As I spoke, I realized my voice was trembling. My hands were held down, his palms burning against my pulse. "Giving up the act? You know my name now?" I struggled, but couldn't move, finally giving in. Ding! Wisnovel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. You knew it was me all along. Was it fun to play me like this? I was just afraid you'd run away, darling. He changed the subject. "Who is that person? Your little boyfriend? Or your new target?" I looked at him blankly. Stefan twisted a strand of my hair around his finger, playing with it absent-mindedly. "Why suddenly come looking for me? You found out no one compares to me, or I'm more convenient to play with, right?" I was stunned for a while, before realizing who he was talking about. No, that guy was a student from my training class. The interrogation continued. What did that kiss back then mean? I asked myself the same question in my mind. Unfortunately, I couldn't find an answer. "You said you can't bear to part with me either. Your way of not bear to part with me was avoiding me for 10 years? His patience finally ran out. The words I wanted to say were drowned out by his aggressive kiss. I was lifted by Stefan. He smiled casually, but his hand around my waist tightened inch by inch. "Effie, remember, you started it first." It felt like a sword was hanging over my head, swaying, but I didn't know when it would fall. And when it finally did, there was suddenly a sense of relief. After the kidnapping ordeal, the anger of being toyed with, and some unknown emotions mingled together. I vented by biting his lips. Receiving a response, Stefan's eyes suddenly darkened. "Darling, it's time to settle the debt." Stefan kept bothering me until the late night. He particularly enjoyed pressing me to confess who I liked. My throat was sore. When I woke up, he was still asleep. The broken toy rabbit that had fallen on the floor was neatly placed on the bedside table. After I pretended to be dead, my parents sorted through my things, selling off the valuable ones and throwing away the worthless ones. Last night, in the heat of the moment, I pointed at that rabbit and asked him intermittently, "This is mine. Did you pick it up?" He didn't deny it. I imagined the silent young man sneaking out at night to rummage through the trash can. It felt somewhat ridiculous. In the end, I took the toy away. Feeling guilty, I left $200 for him. I thought I had settled all scores with Stefan. After the restoration of Picking the Moon, I had my assistant send it to him. In the following period, I was busy arranging the exhibition hall at the art gallery, preparing for my solo art exhibition. The dream that was interrupted in my youth finally saw the light of day after 10 years. I have reclaimed every part of myself that was lost in the past. It seems like all the thorns and hardships along the way have borne sweet fruits, and the wounds are no longer as painful. The staff kept coming and going, brushing past me. When I sensed danger, a glass cover several meters high was already falling towards me. Instinctively, I reached out to block it. The next second, a tall figure tackled me to the ground. There was an explosive sound behind me. In the chaotic crowd, it seemed like I saw Giselle. Stefan protected me well. Only a slight scratch on my back, but his arm got cut by a piece of glass. Fortunately, the doctor said the nerves were not affected. In the hospital room, after the nurse finished bandaging, she left. I walked to the bedside, looking serious. "Next time, don't do such dangerous things." He didn't take it seriously, just smirked. "Your hands are more useful than mine." Hearing this, I couldn't hide my emotions. I had long been accustomed to being alone, enclosing myself in a hard shell, because only this way could I protect myself. But at that moment, a thought suddenly came to me. Even if everyone else would leave me, Stefan wouldn't. What's with that expression, making it seem like I'm about to die? He paused, as if thinking of something interesting, tilted his head and asked me, "If I really died, would you cry for me?" This topic was meaningless. He was not pleased with my silence, and pulled me into his arms. "Why are you avoiding me?" I said. "I'm not avoiding you." He asked again, "What does the $200 mean? Buying me for a night?" I explained, "That's the money I used to buy a doll. If you think it's not enough, I can." His breath tickled my ear. "If I think you paid too much, can we have one more time?" I had a feeling he wasn't talking about a doll. My cheeks burned. Just then the phone rang, and I quickly jumped out of his arms to answer it. Samuel said he was coming to see me. It was clear what this big boy's intentions were. The refusal was on the tip of my tongue, but he said he was already at the hospital gate. So I told Stefan, "A friend is coming to visit me. I'll go out for a bit." As soon as the door was opened a crack, it was pushed back. Stefan reached out from behind and hugged me with one hand. "Is it that guy from last time?" I could only answer truthfully, yes. Footsteps outside paused in the corridor, hesitating. Stefan's delicate kisses fell on my neck at this moment, scratching like cat claws, tickling to the core. "Don't go out. Let him leave." I shrunk my neck. "Don't be silly." Samuel couldn't find me, so he called me a second time. The abrupt ringing made him quickly walk towards us. Stefan had to reluctantly let go of me. As I left the hospital room, Samuel held a bouquet of carnations and awkwardly greeted me. "Miss Powell, you don't have to call me that. You're not my student anymore." Samuel hesitated for a long time, finally gathering the courage. "Can I call you Zora?" At that moment, there was a loud crash in the hospital room, startling both of us. Upon entering, it turned out that a glass had shattered. Blood seeped through the bandage on Stefan's arm. His voice sounded pitiful. "Darling, don't worry. It's just a wound reopening. I hurried to call the nurse. When I came back, Samuel had already left. Stefan played with the bouquet, sadly plucking off the petals one by one. I sighed. What did you say to Samuel? He innocently smiled. Nothing. Just thanked him for coming to see you, Zora. Stefan was used to using his handsome face to feign weakness and deceive people, but his heart was darker than anyone's. But I found it hard to say a harsh word to him, even though I knew he deliberately hurt himself. The investigation into the accident at the exhibition hall has yielded results. According to the staff present at the time, they both felt a sudden electric shock-like sensation, making their hands powerless, which led to the accident. It is highly likely that Giselle and her system were behind it. After a long time, the system came back online. Host, don't scold me first. During this time, I went to the general administration and finally figured it out. Your sister's system is actually a fate-changing system. She stole the protagonist's luck that originally belonged to you. But luck is a give-and-take thing. Because you has been living better and better over the years, your sister's protagonist's luck seems to be running out, but she seems completely unaware. The system seemed somewhat worried. In fact, our regulatory agency had long banned this type of fate-changing system. I don't know why it appeared in this world. The day when the plot ends is approaching. I always have an uneasy feeling. The end of the plot happened to coincide with the official opening day of my art exhibition. Before I could confront Giselle, she came to me first. She somehow managed to bring a lot of media attention, which was very eye-catching. Accompanying her was Stefan. Giselle walked hand in hand with Stefan to me, just like the day we met again 10 years later. She said triumphantly to me, "Stefan has already forgotten about you. He will marry me soon. And you are just a third party between us. What do you think people will say about you?" With that, she turned to the media and started crying. I remained calm inside, watching her cry more and more pitifully, her ugly side captured by the media. I could only say that Giselle didn't understand Stefan at all. If he wanted to forget, he would have forgotten many years ago. How could he still be controlled by you till now? I looked at Stefan and met his teasing gaze. I politely smiled at him. "Mr. Bennett, could you explain a few words?" Stefan in front of the camera looked like a refined scum. "I'm sorry, Miss Green is not in the right state of mind. Please don't take her words seriously." Giselle finally stopped crying, looking at Stefan in disbelief. "Stefan, what did you say?" One after another, the media in the exhibition hall received calls and quickly approached, pointing their cameras at Giselle. "Miss Green, an industry insider has revealed that you were throwing your weight around on set. Miss Green, may we ask if you are involved in a kidnapping case?" Giselle turned pale, unable to say a word. Stefan subtly hooked my little finger and pulled me out of the media encirclement. I have been enduring humiliation for someone till now. Shouldn't there be some compensation? What compensation? Well, love me? Without the protection of the female lead halo, Giselle was completely finished. Stefan went to see the media off at the exhibition hall. Giselle felt like her soul had been sucked out, and she slumped down in despair. I squatted in front of her. "You see, this is what Stefan looks like when he goes crazy." Only then did she come back to her senses a bit and cursed at me without caring about her image. "What right do you have to say that about me? Anyway, Stefan doesn't really like you. He likes a dead person." "A dead person?" I burst into laughter. "My dear sister, after all these years, you haven't changed a bit. At least show some respect for this dead person." Her pupils trembled. "You? How is this possible? How can you be Effie Green?" "Well, no wonder I felt something was off the first time I saw you. Stefan would never be so concerned about a stranger like that." As she spoke, she pretended to lunge at me to grab my neck. "Effie, you've always been inferior to me since you were little. Why should you have a better life than me?" I slapped her to the ground. "Why? Because even if everyone gives up on me, I won't give up on myself. You already have so much. Your parents love you, teachers and classmates like you. But why do you squander it recklessly, never knowing how to cherish it? It's because you've been greedily demanding, turning yourself into what you are now. Giselle, this world does not exist just for you. Oh, by the way, let me tell you a secret. Stefan can hear it. Every time you talk to your system, guess in his heart, what do you look like?" Her face finally changed. She looked at me in shock, as if she had thought of something terrifying, covering her face and screaming. "No, how is that possible? He wouldn't. You don't know. One thing Stefan is best at is disguising himself." Not long after, the sky outside the glass dome of the exhibition hall suddenly changed, with dark clouds rolling. Giselle suddenly twitched and fainted to the ground. The system couldn't care less about avoiding Stefan at this moment, urgently saying, "Oh no, this bad system has been feeding on Giselle's greed for so many years. This world is its cage, and it wants to destroy it and escape after the plot ends. Its power is too strong. I can't stop it." As soon as the words fell, the whole world seemed to be put on pause. It's too silent, and the sound of footsteps became particularly clear. I heard a cold and angry system voice looming over my head. "How can you still move?" Stefan's half-face hid in the shadows. He took off his glasses, his gaze sharp like a thin blade, looking up as if a demon crawling out of the abyss. He slowly reached out his hand. The bad system seemed to take on a tangible form in his hand, being held by him. My system endured PTSD and said, "Oh my god, the male lead is fighting against against its power. He wants to perish with it. Before the dazzling white light swallowed everything, Stefan glanced at me, his lips moving. He said, "Darling, don't cry." That day, there was a heavy rain. The bad system disappeared in this rain, and Stefan fell into a coma. I worked day by day in an orderly manner, living my life. Sometimes I would wonder if I was too cold-blooded, otherwise why hadn't I shed a tear? Giselle, without the system, rambled all day claiming to be the female lead of this world. She was sent to a mental hospital awaiting legal sanctions, and eventually died in a cliff fall on the way to escape by car. The interrupted art exhibition was held again, receiving attention and approval within the industry. My schedule was packed, with many media outlets clamoring to interview me, praising me as a rising star. I was busy, yet empty. One day, the system found me. "Host, there are some things that I think you should see." The system accessed Stefan's memories. The man lying on the hospital bed slept soundly. I kissed the small mole on his eyelid, held his hand, and closed my eyes. Stefan's first 14 years of life were dull and colorless, but everything changed miraculously when he first laid eyes on Effie at the Green family. Falling for Effie seemed like a destined event for Stefan. He soon realized that Effie, in his eyes, was different from how others saw her. It was a secret only he knew. Effie's situation in the Green family seemed unfavorable. Suddenly, from one day on, she started to interact with him, even though the way she interacted was through teasing and bullying him. But she was really clumsy at it. The first time she called him alone to the school storage room. The dim, flickering light bulb, her awkward and stuttered words, her unskillful teasing, it almost sounded like sweet talk to him. He wondered what her lips tasted like. Of course, that was just wishful thinking. If he acted on it, he might scare her away. Life suddenly became more enjoyable. Every night, he would lie in bed, looking forward to what game she would play with him the next day. Of course, all thanks to her system, until he heard that she was planning to leave and disappear. Did she have a new target besides him now? Or did she discover his dark and vile intentions? So he decided to stop pretending and showed her his true self, hoping she would see and remember clearly. Unable to bully her, he resorted to teasing her system instead. Her words were like honey-coated knives. They momentarily enchanted him, leaving a bitter taste in his mouth. She deceived him, and then she left. He realized he was forgetting her. The day after she left, all that remained of her was a healed bite mark. So, he painstakingly traced that mark on his body, bit by bit. He was trapped in the plot, forgetting and remembering day by day. Sometimes, the bite mark on his body would ache, making him remember her a little clearer. Gradually, her figure became more distinct. 10 years later, at an auction, among the crowd, he immediately spotted her. He thought he was dreaming or hallucinating from longing. It wasn't until he asked for her name that the reunion felt real to him. She seemed afraid of him. Her eyes darted nervously, unsure where to look. How could someone be so adorable? He was on the verge of approaching her, teasing her, making her eyes fill with tears, making her see only him. That night turned out to be an unexpected surprise. Afterward, while she was asleep, he quietly took out a ring hidden in the drawer and put it on her finger, softly asking if she would marry him. In his mind, he imagined her response. Satisfied, he placed the rabbit plush toy that fell under the bed back on the nightstand. He could finally sleep well tonight. In truth, he had long known Giselle's true identity. He hesitated to act against her, contemplating how to deliver a fatal blow. Before the incident at the exhibition hall, he witnessed Giselle and her system plotting to control him, to make him lose his memory. He found it to be the funniest joke he had ever heard. For 10 years, he engraved his baby into his bones and blood, never forgetting even in death. Later, he devised a plan. Using the evidence he had gathered over the years, step by step, he led Giselle into the trap he had set for her. As he planned to end it all with that wicked system, he hesitated. Even though her tears were a beautiful sight, he didn't want his baby to shed tears anywhere else but in bed. But he knew she wouldn't cry. No one could be her shield. She was her own armor. A leopard willing to die for his moon 1,000 times over. He hoped she wouldn't shatter anymore. He hoped she would return to the sky or any place of freedom, and he would be content just to catch a glimpse of her from afar. Time rewound in a bright halo of light. He remembered his past life, remembered how she had her destiny swapped by Giselle and was killed at 18, with her parents as accomplices. He recalled how he pretended to be engaged to Giselle, triggering a bomb to take down the Green family. When he realized the world was restarting, he made a wish to the god, hoping that in the next life, he would recognize her at first sight. My heart felt like a corner had been hollowed out, gradually corroding and collapsing. I started with soft sobs, and in the end, I couldn't help but cry out in pain. The system muttered on the side. In the past life, the male lead restarted the world single-handedly, but as a result, he was affected by it, causing many bugs. Host, that's why the male lead can not only hear the system's voice, but also see and touch the system's entity. After the system left, I lay quietly by the bed, watching Stefan's peaceful sleeping face. You asked me what that kiss meant, but actually, I had an answer in my heart long ago. I think, if it had been anyone else at that time, I probably wouldn't have reacted the same way. Because I like you, Stefan. Can you hear me? I miss you. Stefan didn't give me an answer. Just like his love was always hidden beneath the surface like an iceberg, including every time he said he hated me me, each word was love. Unknowingly, I fell asleep. As if there was some movement, I drowsily raised my head. Under the moonlight, Stefan smiled at me. I was stunned. For a moment, I couldn't distinguish between reality and dreams. Are you still half asleep? He gently pinched my cheek. I heard everything you said.